Having never heard or seen a single Formula One stock car race, Keith Davids was introduced to Ernie Hatton number 236 and was invited to a meeting at Bellevue Racing Stadium. What Keith witnessed that day was truly unbelievable, and he couldn't wait to get involved in the sport. Sometime later, he met John Hulton, who would become his sponsored driver. John would reach the grade of Blue Top, whilst never actually winning a race. Very soon after, they parted company. Due to the unfortunate breakup of Keith's marriage, he was left in a quandary as to whether to leave the sport altogether. However, after much consideration, Keith decided to approach Formula One stock car driver Stuart Smith. The following recording was discovered almost 30 years after it was made by the Davids family. His son Scott suggested that the stock car fans may be interested to hear Keith Davids' diaries with the former world champion Stuart Smith. The story begins with his very first race meeting with John Hulton.
The very first meeting, we went to Bellevue for the Daily Mirror Grand Prix. The car was transported on the back of my 3-ton Bedford lorry, as many people remember seeing at the tracks, and how dangerous this was, removing the car from the wagon, and how especially dangerous it was trying to get it on the wagon afterwards, as sometimes there were no wheels, no axles, and no nothing. So after this very first meeting, the very first race, the car was destroyed in just one lap. So we set off back to Swinton, not quite knowing what had happened. A new car was acquired, and this gained John the grade of Blue Top, which is the middle grade. Due to his continued interest outside the sport, we parted company. Derek Fairhurst, an excellent driver from Yellow Grade, offered to race the car and reached Red Top, a remarkable achievement at this time. At this time, May 1982, at Hartlepool, Stuart Smith was then racing under the racing number of 391 and was looking for a sponsor. I approached him that afternoon, but before I approached him, I glanced over to where he was standing and noticed most people were looking at him but pretending not to. Here he was, standing there, cigar between fingers, puffing small clouds of smoke into the air, casually glancing at every female that entered the room, while still involved in a conversation. He never misses a thing, I thought. "Hello, Stu," I said. I expected him to say, "Hiya, Keith," but he just grinned. Now, Stu, as we all know him, is a van salesman with his own business, and he most likely thought I was a buyer. "Can I sponsor you?" I said, very quickly. He looked over to me, looked me up and down, then he replied, "What do you want, an advert on the back of the car?" "Oh no, Stu, the whole thing, car and coach." He nearly choked. Then he coughed a little and said, "Okay, we'll do a deal," and he slapped my hand. Have I bought a van, I thought. After much discussion, we reached a deal. What a hard man to deal with, I thought. He should be grateful. I left Hartlepool that day thinking that Stu Smith had done me a great favour. Little did I know what was in store in the years to come. Now I'd like to give an account of my racing days with Stuart. This is the account of my very first meeting with Stuart. This was at Long Eaton Stadium. The trip down was very, very fast, and I talked to Big Dave, who was to become his coach driver in years to come. I was feeling very new and slightly nervous. When we entered the stadium, the crowd went mad. By this time, Stuart was putting on his core green tracksuit. What could I say, I thought. He then said to me, "When I win, you can have the trophy." "Oh, okay, Stuart." Not really taking it in. Sure enough, to my amazement, he won. And there was his bonny young son, Andrew, with a big grin on his face, giving me the trophy. I felt like I wanted to throw my arms around Stuart as I was so pleased and excited. But I looked round and he had gone, glancing at all the cars in the pits, trying to learn new techniques, as most of the top drivers needed to. I stood there not quite taking it all in, when Big Dave slapped me on the back, taking my breath away, and said to me, "He's good, mate, isn't he?" "That's for sure," I said. Could I handle all this? The Daily Mirror Grand Prix semi-final at Long Eaton was a classic, was Stu taken out by Phil Bicknell. How well he took defeat. I've done that many times myself, he said, as Phil had literally buried him into the fence, destroying his car for the rest of the meeting. This deal in no way altered my sponsorship with Derek Fairhurst, but the financial backing with Derek was showing no business returns, and I decided that with Stu this was likely to change. How right I was. As the season progressed, Stuart and Derek, both doing well, and both had qualified for the World Semi-Final at Leicester. The final at Bellevue, Manchester, with drivers from America, South Africa, New Zealand and Holland having to qualify for this event in their own countries. So this was the most important event of the season, with the other semi-final being at Blackburn. I watched the race with Stuart's wife Anna. Was she nervous? Is he going to win? She kept asking me. Drink after drink followed. Then the race. I've never seen Anna so nervous. After the race she threw her arms around me and kissed me twice. That then decided me to sponsor Stu forever. Did he put her up to this? When the meeting was over, all the drivers came to the bar. Derek was beaming like a young Cheshire cat. Stuart was just managing a grin, as they both qualified for the final at Bellevue. Lenny Wolfenden, who was also there, took my last cigarette, as always. I glanced around the bar, and you could tell the drivers had failed to make it to Bellevue. What a shame, I thought. One race away from the final. The night was endless, and how proud and happy I was, like a dream come true, having sponsored two drivers who've made it to the final at Bellevue. People were so kind to me with their congratulations. It was as if I'd qualified myself. We arrived home in Rochdale about 3 o'clock in the morning. I was physically shattered. Stu didn't race the Sunday afterwards like he would have done years ago. How glad I was, as it would take me 2 weeks to get over all this. The World Final was then our next big event. I had started racing just before then, but I didn't race. Bammy wanted the meeting over on time. This gave me time to savour the event, the parade of the drivers, and how proud I was to see my firm's name on the cars that I had sponsored. I was very, very pleased for Derek, as this was his very first World Final. Fortunately, both my drivers finished the race, not in the places that they would have wished, but the race belonged to a great driver, Willie Harrison, who had been racing for years, possibly as long as Stuart, but had never won the World Final. The stadium was packed, the tension was electric, and Willie had won. The crowd went berserk. What a popular win that was for Willie, a truly great win. Stu and all the other drivers seemed so pleased for him. How I wished it had been my drivers. Little did I know what was to follow. With quite a few races left of the season, with no significance to us, as I remember, now came the time for the end of the season functions, purely social events. This was more hectic than the racing, travelling all over the country to other drivers' functions. White, yellow, blue, red. We went to them all. I really remember going to Frankie Wayman's function at the Winter Gardens, Bradford. We travelled in my car, Stu in the front, his mechanic Kevin in the back with his wife Jane, with Tricia, my wife, next to her. What a journey that was. Snow, fog, ice, getting lost. When we got there, the function was in full swing. They all seemed to be dancing. How strange, I thought. Usually they're standing around talking. I took off my coat and realised why. The place was freezing, and it was aptly called the Winter Gardens. Tricia and I danced all night. Our hosts were fantastic that evening. I felt like I'd arrived on the scene. The men talking about the usual things, then stock cars, and the women moaning about us talking about stock cars. Poor Anna, having been left at home to look after their new baby Stuart. Stuart's function. this being held at the Medway, Rochdale. The time had come for the function. Jane, his fan club secretary, had been very, very busy selling tickets for months. Endless phone calls, people coming from all over the country to be with them. Every driver I'd ever known was there. Drivers from years gone past also, talking about years gone by. How I wished I had been there. I was only a newcomer to the sport. There was endless speculation regarding Stuart's future for the coming season. Was I to sponsor him again? They kept asking me, and many friends would ask the same question. A decision had already been taken regarding this sponsorship at Frankie Wayman's function, with an all-out effort being made to win the World Final in 1983 at Coventry. Stu had decided to race more often and assured me success would follow. I couldn't wait for the 83 season. I'm now going to recap to season 1982, with Stuart now racing at very few meetings due to trying to expand his business. People had started expecting his announced retirement, but little did they know what was to follow in the next few years. As the business deal in sponsorship involves me discussing the drivers' meetings, I was the one that knew what was going on, but we decided to keep them all guessing. With my own racing now taking my time, I now had some idea what Stu had coped with all those years. Endless repairs, travelling, late nights, and for me little success. It was at this time that I gained enormous respect for my fellow drivers and the comradeship that goes with the sport. With Stu not now appearing at many meetings, all I was asked is he retiring? And I'd reply, oh no, he's sponsoring me now. And then off I'd go into the fence. The strangest feeling for me was going down the straight at Bradford with Stuart in pursuit. I'd look in the mirror and see Stuart behind me and notice the crowd were getting very excited. What should I do? Move over, pull off, and then would be a bang on the back of my car. A little knock on the door, he'd call it. Then another big bang. I'd look over my shoulder and see Keith David's home extensions passing me at great speed. Stu would just have time to grin at me and then he'd be gone. Soon after, so would I. I remember a meeting at Bradford when we'd both gone out in the same race. There we were, strolling towards each other on the centre green. Stuart looking like it was just a matter of fact. I was looking very concerned. What's the matter, mate? I said to him. Oh, just a flat, he said. And I'd see him glancing over my shoulder at my crumpled heap in the fence. Yeah, never mind, Keith. You should have seen me when I started, he said. I was all over the place. It made me appreciate the man's choice of words and his professionalism. The Bradford meetings were always so great. Bammy throwing logs and cars around. The bar afterwards, that was always great fun. I then started carrying cigars with me, because wherever I went, Stuart would say, have you a good cigar, mate? And I started carrying them because we then became friends. Anyway, it made me feel like a friend. Oh dear, here comes Lenny. 10 jokes for a fag again. With the season drawing nearer, there seemed little time to prepare the cars. Freezing nights, cold garages. How would we ever be ready on time, I thought, as I was racing also at this time. But with the weather changing a little, it was time for our usual visit to Northampton for the practice. This was approximately on the 3rd of March. Many drivers were there, stock cars, bangers, minis and mine. Stu was there, but minus his car, hitching a drive here and there, as he loved to do. He made sheds drive like Mercs. He drove mine for 6 laps. People thought it was me racing and pantsing him on the straights. And they came up to me afterwards and told me how well I was going. I just grinned. The first meetings did not see too much of Stuart, as he had altered his car. He'd altered the suspension plus many other things. I had such hopes for this season myself, trying to reach Blue Top being my goal. After this season I would retire to concentrate on promoting Stu as best I could. With no Dave Hodgson racing and no Richard Ahern, what would the season hold in store? Before I give my account of this season, I would like to pay my respects to a truly remarkable family of the late Richard Ahern. During May, Stuart phoned me to ask me to accompany him and Lenny Wolfen to Richard's funeral. We travelled down to London with a somewhat apprehensive feeling. I drove the car, listening to Lenny and Stuart, recalling many such sad moments. This journey convinced me that my dedication to the sport would continue forever, God willing. On arriving at Richard's family home in London, the turnout of people was truly magnificent. The sad event to follow will stay with me forever. Richard had been a great admirer of Stuart's, and him being a Londoner, how I wished that I had met him and spoke to him before his sad death. It was such a shame that I'd never known him to speak to. As the day drew to a close, many people had gone. We were invited to stay with the family for the evening. The conversation turned to Richard's racing. What a character he had been. The great Dave Chisholm was there, and just to sit and listen to him and Stuart recalling their racing moments was out of this world. The sadness seemed to pass as the family made us so humbly at home, truly a great and respected people. We stayed overnight at Roy Wilson's home. Roy was an ex-Formula 1 stock car driver. We left very early the following morning. With Lenny driving, we soon made Watford Gap. And then my trouble started. My fuel gauge had been faulty on the way down, and they had both remarked that it seemed to be functioning very incorrectly. And then it happened. Splutter, stop, no diesel. There was Stuart on the hard shoulder, nicking diesel out of a broken down lorry. Good old boy. Our season progressed, with Stu racing more often. I myself reached blue grade. I make a point of mentioning this, as I know what all the other drivers have been through. They will know the great feeling that I had. How hard things were for me, with only a few mechanics, no experience, and I would never ask for Stuart's help because I wanted to experience things for myself. Winning my first race was truly magnificent at Northampton, but the meeting that I treasure most was to follow at Blackburn. With all new tyres fitted on the car, it happened, it rained. The best drivers were getting no grip at all. Here I was, stuffing the best of them. Unknown to me, Lenny Wolfen was using Brent Savage's car, but with his usual rule-breaking roof colours. I fenced him 3 times. Can you imagine? He came to me in the pits and said to me, "That was great, Keith." I asked him what he was doing that evening, and he said, "You bugger, you've stuffed me 3 times. I thought, oh my God, what was to follow? The national win for me was the most exciting win and will stay with me forever. John Lund and the rest, they all went to the fence. The events to follow afterwards were magic. My 2 sons, Daniel and James, travelled round on the lap of honour with me. They sat on the bonnet holding the trophy and the flag. As we went round, the crowd was truly magnificent. As we reached the pit's bend, there was Stuart and the boys clapping like mad. I thought, this makes a change. Thanks, Blackburn. Now, down to the real stuff. As my career went backwards from thence on, most of the drivers getting their own back for Blackburn, bless them, Stu qualified for the semi-final at Sheffield that season, and after a fine drive, I remember quite close getting a puncture, I couldn't wait for Coventry. We waited in anticipation for Coventry. I decided to race, but my thoughts were really with Stuart. Before I continue, I've just glanced at the clock and I noticed that my son David has not arrived home, and it's 2:30 a.m. in the morning. Like many fathers with a son of 18, my concern was with David. But he had gone to a race meeting with Harry Smith. And accompanying Harry on this trip was Stuart and the rest of his crew, who had just gone for the day's racing. Not to race, but to watch. They can't keep away, can they? But that's stock car racing. Back to Coventry. The crew and myself set off very early that day as we were racing, and we couldn't sleep that night. We were only racing in the heats, but just to compete in that meeting was something special for me. When we arrived in the pits, There were only a few coaches there, but the Dutch drivers were there. They strolled over when we took the car off the coach and started to chat to us, and they were asking where was super glue, as this is how it sounded in their accent. I said that he's probably still in bed, and this was only 3 hours before the race, but that's Stuart, I assured them. But they will be here soon. He's probably in bed, I said, with Big Dave, now his driver, practicing 10-4s on the CB, bibbing the horn, and Anna rushing around the house, beckoning Stu to get on the coach. Stuart would always take things casually, never rush, never do anything different. How I wondered at that time how he would feel. I was so nervous, and I was just competing in the heats. 1 hour passed, and then they arrived. Fast going, Dave. I was soon on the coach, chatting to Anna and Stuart. How do you feel, Stuart? I asked him. With me hands, he said. Oh, well, I only asked. The tension was mounting. Stu's mechanics were strolling round the car, checking last-minute details. Friends and past drivers were calling on the coach, giving their regards to Stuart. Oh, by the way, Stuart, I said, I'm off now. I'm racing in the first heat. He just grinned. Now I know why. I only made the first bend, straight in the fence. There I was, a lovely shiny car, sat in the fence, watching the race, but it was a great view. After this heat, the big event was to follow. How nervous I was. Anyway, the parade of drivers took place, and every driver was there that had raced from years ago. Willie Harrison, Lenny Wolfenden, you name them, they were there. I was stood at the back of the crowd with Keith Jubb, a good friend of Stuart's and a racer from years gone by, and a good one. When the race started, I was on tiptoes on a borrowed beer crate, and then they were off. After a few laps, I could see that Stuart was winning. Then they stopped the race. The events to follow will be history, but they restarted the race, as I remember, with a mechanic sitting in Mike Close's car that had been taken out on the bend. Everyone set off, but nobody told Stuart. Eventually, Stuart got going. I thought the car had stalled, but unknown to me, having discussed it with him afterwards, he didn't see the flag dropped, as he was in front of a flag marshal, which is very unusual for a world final. Just as they set off again, I fell off the beer crate. Jubby was killing himself. What a battle was going on out there. Stu left behind. Was the race all over for him, I thought? Then the machine inside the machine took over. Stuart drove like a hero. Everyone was cheering. Stuart was catching the leader. After the race, Stuart had won, that was for sure, but really nobody knew who was second, third or fourth. But the number one had done it. I went like an untamed bull onto the track, hugging the old boy like mad. Remarkable scenes to follow. A lap of honour with Stuart on the pace car, with a wreath round him, waving to the crowd. Speech on the microphone, his usual speech. I stood on the track and literally cried, remembering all that had gone before. Thanks, Stu. Now to the bar, kissing all the women and Big Dave, hugging the mechanics. It was unbelievable. And then over came Lenny, 10 jokes for a fag. Unbelievable moments for all of us. Also, we must remember the drivers that made that race possible. Without them, there is no race, from grade 1 to grade 4. Our journey home, without Stuart and his crew on our coach, just took the icing off the cake. But as I recall saying to the lads on our coach, I'll be there with him next year on the coach, going to the race and leaving the race. Little did I know what was in store for me. With our season not too far from a finish, my attention diverted to my new career in pantomime. As the boss committee, who run their committee from Bradford, had decided and announced their intention to stage a pantomime with the drivers taking part. Cinderella was the pantomime. I heard it in a whisper that Dave Hodgson was making a return, so I rushed down to Bradford to find out more. Just as I thought, Dave was dressed as a bird, an ugly sister. And who was the ugly sister? You've guessed it. It was Stuart. Bammy was there. He was the Baron Harnup. What was I going to be, I pondered. It's now 3 o'clock on the 20th of October. David's just arrived home, looking shattered. What went on, Dave? I asked him. Frankie won the final. Harry got fourth. Well, off to bed, son. Now, where am I? Oh, yes, that's stock car racing. Ken Hopes is Cinderella. Roy Page, Pete Hearn, Marilyn Hillam. People that we've known at the racing, they're all in the pantomime. I'm the good fairy. After 3 weeks rehearsal, I'm now Cinderella. That's stock car racing. Ken's now the fairy. Oggy and Stu are brilliant. Bammy is great, plus the rest of them all. A truly fantastic event. Right, I'd like to just jump forward a little bit and tell you about the characters in the sport. And here's the subjects that I can write about. But afterwards I must ask Stu for his famous personalities, but before I came into the sport. Anyway, this is my account of the personalities that I've met since I've been racing. This first guy that springs to mind must be Wobbler. Unbelievable. One Sunday morning, he turned up at my house at 8 o'clock in the morning, with as black as your hat, his white teeth shining through his coloured face. Our carpet ruined as he stepped inside. The story was that his coach had broken down, just as on his way home from Coventry racing the night before. Can you give me a tow to Bradford, he asked. What, with my 3-ton tipper, I said. It'll be right, he said. So off we went. On reaching the M62 at Worsley, near my home, he said it's just up there. As we followed the trail of oil and bits of gearbox on the motorway, I wonder what was next as we reached the coach. There was all Colin's family making breakfast on it, as if it was a Sunday outing. And to my amazement, John Turner's son's Minnie was hitched up on the back as well. We'll never tow that, I said. Oh, don't worry, said Colin. The wife's walking. So off we went, using an old bit of rope from the back of the transporter. Just to make things worse, we set off on a 4-to-1 incline. Having gone a few miles at about 2 miles an hour, Colin set off walking and passed me on the hard shoulder, grinning at me. We just made Whitefield before the wagon started to overheat. That's it, Colin, I said. No more. I've got to use this wagon for work Monday. Having then phoned Bradford for a breakdown, Colin waved goodbye and off they went. I went home to dirty finger marks all over our walls, plus a cold dinner. But do you know, I wouldn't have missed that morning for the world. After that, Colin bought a hearse to carry his car about. What a sight that was. You would pass him on the motorway to Aycliffe, and there he would be, sat in the front, with his stock car touching their backs. Thanks, Colin, for all those great times. See you in Cornwall, at your new boarding house called Swarthega. Now on to my next favourite, Lenny the Fag Wolf. You never know what's next with him. One day when I was playing football for the stock car drivers, me in goal for the stock car drivers versus supporters, Lenny tied me to the bar during the game, and the ref scored for them. No offsides in them days. Lenny's rise to fame is his jokes he tells. He tells them so fast you don't remember what he's told you until he kills himself laughing. He always bends right over and whispers in your ear, as if nobody else should hear them. But later on, you find out that he's told everybody. What a driver and a great mate. What no meat, what no fags. Another good favourite for me was George Rudd. I never knew him well, but what a character. During the race he would dive bomb every driver in sight, from any angle. and he would smoke his tyres most of the time. And when he would finish the race, his tyres would be down to the canvas. I must say we miss you, George. My next favourite is my good old mate Fred Miller. For Fred worked so hard, but with a young family, his cars are never what he really would like them to be. One day at White City, I was leaning on the fence waiting for the cars to come onto the track, right next to the pit's gate. Do you remember White City? Long gone now. When there was an almighty bang. Poor Fred's tracking was way out, and he clouted the hot dog stand on his way out onto the track, and finished up going on the track with onions and tomato sauce all over his car. One meeting at Crewe, he hit the fence so hard his glasses, the ones he wears all day, shot over the track, and there was my mate Fred, hands and knees, retrieving them from the muck. How he laughed that day. One day, Fred, you will have the car you deserve, then things will change, you'll see. Derek Ferris, the lad I used to sponsor, was a star turn as well, but he was soon tamed down a bit when he started courting, like we all do. One day when we travelling back from Aycliffe, we passed Wobbler, not unusual, and there for all to see was Derek's mating call, a lovely bear behind, peeping at Wobbler's. Soon the same thing appeared from Wobbler's coach, from his mate Keith. He's a big boy now. Come on, Derek, let's have those laughs again. From you again, some time to come. The character not racing now, only for TV, is my good friend Alan Barker. Having met Alan through Stuart, I expected him to be sane, but not Alan. One day he asked me not to cause any hold-ups at Bellevue during my race, as he wanted to get home early to his pub, as he was working as a track marshal that day at Bellevue. Thanks, Alan. I made the first bend, got knocked out, held up the race for 20 minutes, due to him making me nervous. Alan's fun is the things he says to you, with a great deadpan face. You'll never forget the night he helped Stu out late. He kept Stu out late, Stu not arriving home to Anna till the next day, minus her car. Oh dear, what have I said? Anyway, he's offered to show for Stu all year. Best of luck, Alan, in your new pub. See, you nearly got run over, Alan, in the world final. P.S. That meeting I got knocked out was the British Championship, which Stuart won. I never saw the race, as I was in hospital. When I came to, they brought in a lad who had been in a road accident, leaving Bellevue. Thinking he would have known the results of the race, I asked him the results, but unfortunately his face was covered in bandages. I never did hear what he said. So there you are, that's all of us now. I must have left plenty out though. Now I'd like to give my impression of the promoters that I've met. These guys are the ones that run the tracks. Without them there would be no racing. My favourite one is Stu Banthorpe. I've never seen a millionaire work so hard, pushing cars off the track, plus drivers, letting off fireworks, acting, speedway, the whole bit. Checking people hiding before they get in. One day there were so many on our coach, I was hiding as well, and I was the driver. When his wife Pat asked where's Keith, the lad said, oh, he'll be here soon, and Stu just dropped his shoulders and got off the coach. One night when doing our pantomime at Coventry, his wife was picking him up from the theatre, having been to Speedway at Coventry, but unfortunately for Stuart the meeting was held up very late due to rain on the track, and the poor old boy had to wait till 2 in the morning in the shop doorway for her to arrive. Thanks for your kind words, Stu, in your programme. My next promoter is Warren Taylor. Warren used to race, as did Stu Banthorpe, but Warren is still driving a bit now in his pace car. Warren has also got a very nice stadium, and his wife also helps him at the track too. The only trouble when you race there is you can't understand the word they're saying. Sometimes you'll miss your heat because of this. We met Warren in Holland. I had a great evening with them, all of them. I bet you miss me up there, Warren. I hear you sold your breakdown now, and you don't have to mend your fence so much. I got knocked out there too, under the sponsors' lounge. Who was up there watching but Stuart Smith? I bet he was so embarrassed as I destroyed Warren's new fence. This was also the British Championships in 1983. My mate Lenny helped carry the stretcher with me to the ambulance. He'll do anything for responsible Lenny. Good luck in your new venture anyway, Warren, hang gliding. My next man is Mike Parker, who takes all the stick, but if it wasn't for Mike, you wouldn't have crew. Blackburn was a great success for him. What a pity it had to close. Rochdale, his other track, is a great Sunday fun. From the bar you can watch the racing. That's not bad. I went with Mike to Thameside supporters guest night, people asking us questions, and I found him a very sincere and honest man with plenty of enthusiasm for our sport. Give us more, Mike. Then there are just a few promoters that I have never met, but if they all like the rest of the people that I have met, the sport will go from strength to strength, and I must thank them all for putting up with me. I would like to end by paying my greatest respects to a truly brilliant driver, Dave Hodgson, who at this time was recovering from a serious racing injury at Hartlepool early in the season, and to his wife Jenny, a truly great friend of us all, who travelled to Hartlepool most days of the week for months on end nursing Davy back to health, and also looking after her two sons, Andrew and Stephen, plus, I might add, helping to run the family business. But there was no keeping Dave down. Now this is my opinion of the racetracks that I raced at. I think I've been to them all now, thank God. I couldn't take any more. They all should have been in Swinton for my money. I've been to Ringwood and seen the flag marshal knocked off his perch. That's now closed. You needed a camel at Ringwood to get to the pits. Then there was Skegness. What days they were. We seemed to be out all day on the beach, and then we'd be racing on the bumper cars against Lenny, Stu and all the rest of them. Then you get to the track and it was like a sandstorm. Then the late bar and the long trip home in convoy, Oggy, Smithy and us. Now to Coventry, a beautiful track, no complaints there, when I could start my car. I'll push around the pits one day, all night, and then load it up. Never again. Long Eaton. I raced there last Christmas 1983. It rained all the meeting so hard they cancelled the last race. My car was never so clean in that day, but there's plenty of good races down there. I never stood no chance at all. But I love their company on the centre green. The tyres round the track seem to be bigger than my car. Northampton. Now here's a mean track. Plenty of room for racing, a good bar. Oh, those tyres on the track. Very fast racing out there. This is where I had my first win. I remember the TV meeting. I started, got a puncher, then another, but I kept going, just for the advertising on TV. I hope they have good racing for years to come. Thanks for everything. Now moving north to Crewe. The commentator once said I was the worst driver he had ever seen, but it's a great consolation to know that I sponsored the very best. I once had no brakes in the final there, and ran straight into the prepared November the 5th bonfire. Do you remember that? Great racing there for us all. The floodlights are a little too bright though. A great challenge for Mike Parker. White City. What a shame to race there no more. This was a favourite track for the Southern lads, Pete Bailey and all. They always had a good crowd there. They were very pits area. I first met Keith Stewart, a member of the Mike Parker gang there. They were good lads though, all of them. Thanks for the memory. Blackburn, another great track, a great loss to all of us. I remember the World Semi-Final there, in 82 I think. It was a brilliant racing, surprised many people that night. Mike Parker always excelled there, and I remember the great race that I won there. Also a great hospital, as I had an overnight stay there. Now just a memory. Now to Rochdale. 20 breakdowns, spare fences at the ready. What action! Stuart's local track, and he had many great battles with Dougie Cronshaw there. The pits extended into the town centre there when it was a big meeting. I remember one meeting when my car was destroyed and Stu's supporters asked me if Stu was still setting my car up. How we laughed that night, and them too. Thanks, Rochdale. Sheffield. One exciting track to race on. Great bars and good food. I rolled my car there for the very first time. I enjoyed that. Oh, what pain when hitting those grab fences. Never again for me. Ouch. Aycliffe. A very friendly track, modern breakdown vehicles, the best. Grumpy driver though, good old boy. Great commentator, he loves Joe Joplin. It's a very fast and bumpy racing. Oh, those fences. You had to be a good driver just to get your coach through the tunnel. One day it will happen. Glad it wasn't me. Thanks to you all. Hartlepool. A great place to be on a Sunday afternoon. Lovely hospital there. Well-run stadium, good bar, great sponsors bar. Just do for me now. I once got pushed off the track when I had no brakes, and this guy nearly pushed me over the ramp. There's a photo supplied. Poor old Trish, I can't sleep at night. Now it's 3 o'clock in the morning on the 3rd of the 11th, 1984. My lad David's going to Coventry and then Northampton with Stuart. Then he's racing the car as Stuart has hurt his foot fighting with the lads in the coach. What a great time they're having now. Good luck, lads. Good luck to you all. I'm staying at home these days. David's sleeping bags in the corner as they're staying overnight. He's looking forward to the racing and then the barbecue. Stuart's taking steaks this time. My lad's having the time of his life, having been to Holland with all of us. Gone are my dreams of him playing for West Ham. My mind's now back to the panto. Stuart and Oggy and me always travelling together to the rehearsals on a Wednesday night. One night they went in their costumes. We went in a pub beforehand, and what looks we got. After rehearsals we went to a restaurant. There was Stu and Oggy sitting in their dresses, and then walked this guy and said, "Hello Stuart, hello Oggy." You should have seen the looks on their faces. On the way back to Oggy's we were stopped by the police. I got out and he said to me, "Where are you going?" as it was 2 in the morning. I said I was going to Swinton. With my Cockney accent he looked at me rather suspicious. And "OK then, where have you been?" he said. "Oh, I've been doing pantomime at Bradford, playing in Cinderella." "Oh yes," he said, "I'm sure. I suppose they're your ugly sisters in the back." And sure enough, there was Oggy and Stuart looking very, very worse for drink. "Oh, bugger off," he said, and we went. The weeks that followed were a great scream. We couldn't act for laughing. One night Stuart did his act on the table and the lot collapsed. I ran on stage in one rehearsal scene, slid on the floor and said to my dad, Bammy, "Please let me go to the ball, father." And as I grabbed him I pulled down his trousers. From then on he was very wary of me. The opening night was very tense for us all. The snow was 3 feet deep outside. Would they come, we thought? Sure enough, true stock car fans they were. They turned up in their hundreds, travelling from all over the country. We did 2 shows that week, both a great laugh and a great success for us all. Then we were off to Coventry in the summer to show the southern drivers the pantomime. Yes, in the summer. This is just for the stock car people. This time it was a real theatre with proper curtains and proper stage hands. They couldn't believe their eyes and ears when we acted our pantomime, forgetting our lines but ad-libbing to cover up. How they were killing themselves backstage. They were so amused that they dropped the curtain too soon at the end. Well, they're only amateurs and we're the pros. Thanks John, Joan, Turner and all of you for such a great and fantastic time in your pantomime. World Final 1984. What can I say? Unbelievable. The most memorable race I've ever seen. The Maestro, the Living Legend and other names all rolled into one. The night of all nights, with a party afterwards at our home, win or lose. What a surprise was in store for Swinton later that evening when we all arrived home on the coach with the cassette at full blast and us all singing "We Are the Champions" all the way back. The Swinton people staring in disbelief. There we were dancing in the streets with a cup and flags. Many drivers came back with us that evening. There were bodies everywhere. Trish not knowing the result until we arrived, having tried to phone Bellevue, but unfortunately the line was engaged, so she had to stay at home preparing the food. Poor Trish. Thanks a lot. A great night. The American lads were back with us with their wives, plus Harry van der Spey and his wife. It seemed to go on forever. There were coaches parked everywhere. We filled the cup with champagne, and how we drank and how we danced. How's this for me, with Stu winning 2 times in 3 years of sponsorship, after so much speculation regarding his retirement? Was it all worth it? Yes, it was, that's for sure. Then I thought of the years gone by, and I knew how lucky I was, and how fortunate I was to sponsor Stuart. But for him and stock car racing, this would never have happened. Now off to the States. What an honour to be invited to Beech Ridge with Stuart. 6 of us went: Stuart, Anna, young Stuart, Tricia, me, and my son Scott. First to Manchester, then to London, then to Boston, and then Portland, Maine. One heck of a journey. Kids screaming on the plane, Stuart with earphones on, pretending to watch the film, but hoping not to hear the kids. We must have pushed them kids all over America in their pushchairs. What pushers we were. I'm sure Stuart would be a white top at that job, and me being a red. We were met at Portland, Maine by Phil Libby, who helps run Beech Ridge Speedway, which is stock car racing for them in America. The hotel was marvellous. We were taken in turns in the hotel to visit the rooms and listen for the children in the evening. I wondered what people thought of us disappearing every quarter of an hour, one at a time. And every time that it was my turn, one of the kids woke up. Oh well. Stuart prepared for the first meeting by sleeping in the afternoons while we played with the kids at the pool. Come the first meeting, Stuart was really looking forward to the racing in a modified car. How well he did that night. The next day we got away on our own and went to a bar. We left the hired Lincoln outside. When we came out, the car was gone. Oh dear, back in the bar again. Then a guy from the track called at the bar and asked us how we were doing, and we said the car's missing. He said, "Where did you park it?" When we showed us, he started laughing. He said, "You silly buggers," he said, "you've parked it on a fire hydrant. The police have towed it away." When we contacted the police, they enjoyed it so much. They were tickled pink. They gave Stu and I a Portland Police t-shirt as a memento. What great people they were. The garage that towed the car away were friends of the flag marshal at the track, so all was well. Come the big meeting, Stuart was second in the heat, winning the final for 6 laps. They kept stopping the racing over there for the slightest danger, but at those speeds you can't blame them. There was Anna and I on the sponsors' bar, this balcony above the crowd, shouting and dancing with Stuart winning, when all of a sudden I dropped my cigarette on this rather fat lady's head, and to my horror she never noticed it for 2 laps. When it got hot she looked up at us and said, "What the hell's going on up there?" We fell apart laughing. Poor Stu got took out soon after that with his track rod breaking, but they'll remember his racing there for years to come. Our holiday continued with great weather. We were invited all over the place, Stu driving the car and me navigating. One day he came out of a friend's house and turned left on the wrong side of the road, with his car heading towards us at great speed. What news that would have made in England. I got the blame though. We were taken everywhere by the drivers and their friends. We went to parties, swimming at night, barbecues. How lucky we were. Then one day Stu and me and Tricia went to this big slide park on these water chutes, and there we were, up and down like big kids, taking it in turns to slide down. What great memories, what great people. Thanks America. Here we go again. This time it's Holland for the World Long Track Final. We didn't travel with the crew on the coach as we left later due to business reasons. On arriving in Holland, Venlo, Trish and I were sitting in a bar miles from anywhere when in came most of the Brisker stock car supporters. "Hello," they said. As we looked round we couldn't believe our eyes, so I spilled my soup all over the floor. The racing was very good over there, with Stu getting second in the final. Our other lads did great also. We had some wild nights. The guy that Stuart touched into the fence came on the bus afterwards and told Stuart, "Don't worry, son, that's stock car racing." What a true sportsman he was. The beer flowed. The hotel staff where we stayed really admired Stuart and all of us, and when we left, they all stood outside and clapped as we left. The great Dutchmen and kind people. Thanks, Venlo. The supporters, what great people they are. So very friendly and kind, always ready to help you. Many travel all over the country to watch their favourite racer. Thanks to the fan with the banner which reads, "I hate Stuart Smith," and also Keith Davids. I love that. For all your friendship, even if I did at times take out your favourite driver. Remember Hartlepool, one final? I took out Mike Close and Frankie Wayman right at the end, and Mike was winning, I think, or Frankie. And then along came Lenny to win the final. Good old Lenny, got a fag. Lenny came up to me in the pits and pretended to give me a fiver. Mrs. Close really tore me off a strip that day, but I still love you, Helen. We had some great nights at your place when visiting you, and your pub. Your home is up in the hills. I'm sure I saw Billy the Kid one night. Thanks to you all for your support. Now we come to the committee. Derek Holmes, Bill Gill, Frankie, Lenny, Stuart, Danny Clark, Neil Picorni, and others. Thanks, lads. You're running the drivers' committee fine, helping to get better start money for us all. Yes, we get paid to race. Bill Gill runs the Drivers' Benevolent Fund, a great help to those lads who get injured out there. I never claimed, as they would have been skint now. Thanks for your service and giving up your time to help all of us. The magazines, a great help to all of us, keeping us up to date with results and positions and meeting reports. Thanks for the kind things that you said about me. Kept me going at times. Great reading on the long journey home. A great service to the sport. Long may you continue. And to the cartoonists who really excel with the illustrations of our great sport. Glad to see Des Penny doing so well, as I involved Des with the sport one day in Rochdale back 3 years. I invited Des to take a photo of his son sitting in my car, and how pleased he was. And he wrote to me with a great letter with some nice cartoons, and it was then that I decided to introduce him to the sport, and what a great success he has been. Good luck, Des, and all of you. The first aid people. Without your help, I wouldn't be writing this now. One day at Aycliffe, I hit the fence so hard that I was nearly knocked out and my tongue was bleeding. The old medic who turned up to help me tried to stick a plaster on my tongue. "Yes," he said, "hold still, it's waterproof." Great old boy. Thanks, lads. The track staff. What can I say? You are the fellows that gave me all your time to help me and all the rest of us. I must have been a nightmare to you all. I bet you dreaded me arriving at the track. Remember the times you were pushing me on my tipper with the ramps falling off, when I had no brakes? Frightened everybody to death, but what a crowd we got. Thanks a million. Thanks to all the mechanics who helped me. What a great bunch of lads. There was Tony, his brother Tommy, Ian, Martin, Big Dave at times, Brian, an excellent sign writer, Mark, Peter, my son Dave, Stu, Super Clean, and plenty of others. And the saddest thing for me was my good pal Lance, who used to drive my coach for me, but sadly no longer with us, killed in a motor accident returning from a Blackman meeting, having given up being with us due to the late nights and long hours. I'd like to give my deepest sympathy to his parents, for he was truly a great son. Well, thanks all of you for your help. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I have.
And now let's fast forward 30 years to the present day. After the sad passing of Stuart Smith Sr., Keith's best man, best friend and driver, I'd like to hand you over to Keith Davids for a few final words to finish off what he started those 30 years ago.
Hi guys, what a surprise, to find all this material and I'd even forgotten about it. But now it's been done, I've really enjoyed the time that has been spent to put it in perspective. Obviously, it's very sad times at the moment because Stuart's no longer with us, and just to think that we're listening to this just brings back so many memories. But fortunately, I came back in the sport after a big absence, and my son Scott decided that he wanted to do stock car racing because it was safer than motocross racing. Who was he kidding? No, it is safer because you don't get thrown off a bike. But it can be dangerous, and we all know that. I'd like to say hello to Andrew and Stuart, and I hope you've enjoyed this. Your father was a great friend of mine, and miss him so much. Scott was under the impression that he would cope with it quite easily, but he realised now that it wasn't that easy. We purchased a car from Stuart and Andrew's engine, and off we went. I really can tell you this, that it took back so many memories of when I raced, because Scott destroyed everything that I bought for him. But fortunately, he managed to cope with it. And when we think back to the first or second race, to think that he won a final in his second meeting at Sheffield, and Stuart was on the phone all the time to me. What's going on? What's happened? He was so interested. He loved Scott, and I really appreciate that. He did. And Scott and Stuart have become good pals now. Andrew's not racing, but we still miss Andrew, and we still see him, and that's the great thing. Stuart and I hooked up again as if we'd never been apart, and we became such good friends again, and the laughs we had was unbelievable. I just couldn't tell you. I couldn't wait to go to a meeting because I knew what was coming. We'd be in the bar, probably a few drinks too many, and then we'd start laughing, and comical, honestly. Stock car racing brought us together, and I'm telling you something, I wouldn't have changed that for the world. We had so many good laughs, and we went to so many functions in the last few years. I'll tell you one that we went to, which the Nietzsche's function, it was a birthday. Stuart had quite a lot to drink, and when I left to go back to the hotel at night, it was probably 2 o'clock in the morning. And I said, right, Stuart, I'm off now. Me and Trish are going to bed. And he stayed there. The next morning, we came to the coach to set off to Buxton, and who was on the coach but Stuart? I said, what the bloody hell are you doing here? He said, oh, I fell asleep. He said, it weren't worth going home. I said, where are you staying then? He said, I'm staying with Stuart, my son. I said, well, what's he going to be thinking? He said, oh, he'd be all right. So we gave him a pint or bottle of beer, and off we went to Buxton. I got a phone call about 10 minutes later from Stuart, and he said, Keith, he said, have you seen me dad? He said, I've no idea where he is. I'm worried to death. I said, yes, he sat next to me. Well, that was a journey on its own. These young lads and mechanics of ours had to listen, and were so fortunate to hear Stuart at his best. Reminiscing, telling stories. Scott was driving. I think he told Scott he was a good driver. I don't know. We didn't get out the first gear some of the times up them bloody hills. Anyway, Stuart was at his very, very best that day, telling so many stories. It was unbelievable. Them lads were so lucky to hear all that. And so it went on. We just, loved to be with each other. And we had great laughs, And I remember the last Birmingham of the season, of that season, before Stuart sadly passed away. We sat in that bar and we said, do you know something? I'm not going back to the coach, because that's what Stuart used to always do, go back to see the lads, see what was going on. We were knackered. It was such a bloody walk up them hills at Birmingham. We stayed in the bar, and that was the last time I spent with Stuart at a meeting, last meeting we ever spent together, and it was so comical. Willie Harrison, all them guys came in, and they could see that we were having such a great time, and we did. And obviously when Scott came home one day near Christmas and told me what had happened to Stuart, I was devastated. We used to talk about this, Stuart and I, and he used to say that I'd be first, and he would be there for me. But this was such a shock, a massive shock, and it took some getting over. I must tell you, I couldn't believe the story what Scott had told me, and we all sat in the house and we were just dumbstruck. A few days have passed, and Stuart rang me, and he said, Keith, he said, would you do a speech at my dad's funeral? I said, of course I would, Stuart. How could I say no to that? But it took some doing, It was difficult. I had to do something. I had to get it right. If I didn't get it right, I feel like I'd let him down. So it took me quite a few nights to think about what to do, write it down, and when the day came, it was such an emotional day for everybody, and I was so pleased that what I said was appreciated by the family, and that was the nicest thing they said to me, because otherwise I think I would have been disappointed with myself. So I'd like to say to the Smith family, thank you, and I hope we can all be friends for many years to come.
Perhaps an appropriate end to this voiceover is to end with Keith David's words from 30 years ago, as a final message to all drivers and fans alike. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.
Now I'd like to give a summary. I hope it in some way helps our sport. The sport deserves more coverage, TV, newspaper, etc. The Daily Mirror do a grand job for us, and the Star. As the people really don't know what they're missing. Try thinking of a television meeting with an ex-driver commentating like STUART, then they would enjoy it. Then they would meet the drivers as they really are. They're great people. There's so much danger in the sport and so much fun. Stock car racing is dangerous. When you come to the meetings, keep your children out of the pits, as this is a hazard to the drivers and a danger to your children. Take care and take yourselves into the stand and sit back and marvel at the excellent driving skills and the fun. Keith Davids, 462.
We are the champions.